So we have had a few repeat guests in our history.
We have, and it's always a fun time. It's always a fun
Yes.
time to have guests on this podcast.
Yes. And so this is something, I think I've teased it the last couple of weeks. It's been in the works for a while, and sometimes it's tough to coordinate schedules, but we finally got it. Um, so if you remember episode 181, I believe, um, we had Merrick Glass of Konect
Hmm.
join us, and he's back. So Merrick, welcome back.
Thanks, guys. Great to be back. Yeah, no, and as you said, it's been a long time coming, but I'm thrilled to be back with you guys. It's good to
Yeah.
chat again.
And you have some news about your new role within the company, and so if you'd like to share some of
Well,
that, and then
Ed,
I
Ed,
also wait a minute. Am I getting too excited?
yeah,
We got to introduce ourselves first.
I don't know who you are, Ed.
Okay, Ed Sanchez. I'm a very enthusiastic podcaster of 4+ years, as you might have gathered from my spontaneous introduction. Um, been doing various things in the automotive world for over 2 decades. I'll just leave it at that. Um, and yeah, diving headfirst in the big brave world of EVs.
And I'm Phil Royle. I've got, as I said last week, I've got a microphone and a headset, so I'm a professional. Uh, so this to set the stage for us before we jump too far into this, Ed. There was a story that led to where we are today.
Yes. Would you like me to
Yeah, can you remind me
regale you
because
with
I've got the
the?
memory of a sieve. So,
Okay. Well, so this is gosh, I think a couple months ago, I got an email from basically Merrick and one of his assistants saying, "Oh, we just Konect and Gilbarco Veeder-Root, Vontier, the parent company, conducted the survey of EV owners, kind of their wants and kind of a wish list." And when I first read it, I was like, honestly, this isn't too exciting because these, not kind of to paraphrase the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Drivers want convenience, they want amenities, they want charging close to them, reliable charging. I'm like, of course, everyone wants that. So I didn't really think much of it, and I'm like, well, yeah, I would like to have them on at some point in the future, but I didn't feel a great sense of urgency at the time. But then I visited a friend who had her car in the shop, and I guess at the time the rental company, the only car they had available was a Nissan Leaf. And of course, we know, EV nerds would know this is not the new 2026 models, the older style. So the DC fast charging on that was a Chatamo plug, which is becoming more and more rare. So that narrows the field even from CCS, NACS, Chatamo is like, so to try to find an operational Chatamo charger, we spent over an hour looking for a
wow.
charger that worked. And I was like, this is miserable.
This is not convenient or close or
No,
convenient. Like, this is nothing.
no. And, I've said this more than once. I'm spoiled as a Tesla owner because regardless of what you think of Elon or Tesla as a brand, the supercharger network is really top notch in terms of availability, reliability, ease of use. So it was really an eye-opening moment for me. And I was like, you know what? If other EV drivers, if this is what they have to go through to charge, I understand the frustration and I understand the hesitation on part of consumers. Like, I don't want to deal with this. So that was really the light bulb moment for me. And I reached immediately after that, reached out to Mary and said, let's let's talk about this because this is really a big deal.
So enter Merrick.
Finally, after
Now
months.
we'll get to your con. Now we'll get to you. Uh, Brief introduction. I
Sure.
know we went through it before, but let's set the stage as well for you. Um,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, sure. No, and again, thanks for having me back on, guys. So I'm Merrick Glass, and I am now the president of Konect. I know the last time that I was on here chatting with you guys, I was our global head of strategy and marketing. But back in April of this year, I actually took on the president role, so now I'm leading the business globally.
Wow.
Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. No, it's very, very exciting.
Yeah.
And just as a reminder, right? So I mean, Connect, I know Ed, you mentioned it, right? But Konect is part of Gilbarco Veeder-Root, which is part of our parent company, Vontier. Vontier is a mobility technology conglomerate, essentially, that trades publicly on the New York Stock Exchange. And then Gilbarco Veeder-Root is actually a business that's been providing traditional fueling solutions for the last 160 years, right? And so essentially all of our biggest customers would be those fuel retailers that everybody's familiar with, the Sheets, the Wawas, the BPs, the Exxons, all of those guys. And essentially we ended up launching Konect because all of those customers were becoming increasingly interested in EV as they started to see the pickup. And so we felt that it was our duty as one of the providers and one of their partners to make sure that we had a fantastic EV offering to bring them as well. And so Konect is now the e-mobility focused provider within Gilbarco Veeder-Root that helps bring electrification to more and more convenience stores across North America and the world.
I just want to interject real quickly again, like I did in the beginning. What kind of initially sparked my desire to reach out to Konect and to Merrick, and you thought, how do you even put this together? Is I noticed, I recognized the Gilbarco Veeder-Root name from gas pumps,
Yeah.
and like, oh, they're doing an EV initiative. This is really interesting. I want to dive into that. And at first you were like, what?
Yeah.
Then
No,
then
you lost me at the beginning.
but then you fueled up your car and you're like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
they make
look at
gas
that.
pumps.
Turns out you're right.
So anyway, well, so let's get to the kind of the heart of the issue
Yeah.
today. You guys did a survey of EV drivers and sort of their
Right.
wants, needs, pain points, wishes, so forth. I'm going to go over kind of the top line. I kind of pulled it out. Said, so these are some of the top points of the findings of the survey. Said 32% of EV drivers said they would favor sites close to their location, close to major routes. Drivers don't want to make big detours. 21% would avoid sites with 10 to 20-minute detour, and 37% said they would not go to one more than 20 minutes off their route. 28% of drivers say they would be more likely to visit charger with a loyalty or rewards program. 17, and this is something Philip and I have discussed before. 17% of drivers wanted to pay for charging in store.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting.
I wonder if that's got more to do with just app fatigue than anything.
Well, I think we'll get into that, 'cause
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
another thing
Yeah.
too. 93% of drivers would pay more for the convenience of being, closer on the route. And let's see where also uptime. It says, I guess governments are starting to mandate uptime. 99% in the UK, which is pretty ambitious.
Yeah.
98% in Australia, 97% for NEVI funded fast chargers. Wi-Fi was a big want.
Yeah.
Refreshments, food, restrooms, and yeah, and finally, 99% of drivers said they were willing to make a 5-minute detour to get the amenities they're looking for. So
Yeah.
anyway, I'm going to hand it over to you to kind of unpack this a little and kind of
Sure.
what was the kind of the genesis of this, and how this has influenced Konect's business strategy in terms of
Yeah.
the B2Bs or kind of the consumer facing proposition.
Yeah, sure. So happy to unpack it, right? And there's a lot in there, right? And I mean, it's look, I think that the interesting piece that I would say it, right, is like as you read through it the first time, and I think you rightly said, right, you read through these things and you think, hey, I mean, like it doesn't sound like rocket science, right? Like drivers want
Seems
something that's
obvious, yeah.
convenient, they want amenities, they want all these things. But the interesting piece, right, and I know we chatted about this a little bit last time, is to date, many of the CPOs have not actually been able to give consumers that, right? Like you're still running into chargers that are in the back of a parking lot that are unlit, not covered. People are standing there in the rain trying to get the charger fired up. Reliability remains a key issue, right? And I think this was a really interesting way for us to just solidify some of that and really get some data behind it. And again, part of it is, look, I think for all of us within the space, right, we want to see that adoption continue. We want to see more and more sites come online and pick this up. And so interesting for us as we're speaking to our core customer base, it's a really good way of showing them, hey, the sites that you guys have, the knowledge that you guys have, the experience that you've already been able to bring to drivers is truly differentiating within this space.
Mhm.
Um, and so again, I can unpack a couple of those pieces, right? Because I think some of them are very important to hit on. But I think a lot of it just comes back to, hey, even though those things sound obvious, I think given where the EV space was a few years ago, with most of the new drivers being like very dedicated early adopters,
Mhm.
a lot of those pieces were nice to haves, right? In the sense that
Mhm.
you still had drivers that were willing to go to the back of that dark parking lot, right, and sit in the rain or stand in the rain as they're trying to get the charger going or walk the 500 feet to the nearest bathroom or whatever it was, right? But as we've continued to see EVs adopt, um, I mean, look, just last year, right? I think there was 1.5 million plug-in vehicles that were sold in the U.S. and
Mhm.
everything that we've seen in terms of kind of new studies and new releases coming out in terms of adoption, despite all the turbulence and noise around the market in the first half of this year,
Mhm.
that adoption is continuing to pick up, right? And
Mhm.
so with that, I think comes a couple of things. I think one is look, it's new drivers, right? And there's new drivers that are coming online that probably have less patience than those early adopters, right?
Mhm.
And so I think all of these pieces that we're talking about here in terms of reliability, amenities, convenience, all of those things, we're really starting to see really shift towards being table stakes, right? Whereas
Mhm.
before they were
Mhm.
kind of really things that were fantastic.
Nice to have. Yeah.
Um, yeah, exactly right. And I mean, again, I think it's a really exciting time to be in the space, given look, that presents significant challenges to some charge point operators, but it also presents significant opportunities, right? And I think kind of being able to take this data in and really craft both our strategy, right, but also for
Mhm.
our core customers who are typically the site hosts who are going to be doing this, for them to be able to have this kind of data and look through that and really have an understanding for what good looks like, I think is hopefully going to drive just the industry to be better for EV drivers, right?
Mhm.
And make it so that all those things continue to come through. But I mean, look, I think you said it, right? And I think it is one of those things that is a limiter for people who are looking to adopt EVs today, right?
Mhm.
Is they want that same level of convenience and they want that exact same feeling as they have when they fill up an ICE car,
Mhm.
right? And in that, it's all those things that you mentioned, right? It's location. Um, and again, that one was, I mean, some of those stats were pretty interesting, right? Where you see 93% of drivers are willing to pay extra to avoid a 20-minute detour,
Mhm.
right? And I mean, even on top of that, right? It's you see like 1 in 5 are going to avoid sites that are a 10 to 20-minute detour, right? And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
that location piece starts to become very, very important.
Mhm.
And what I think you're seeing, right, is like as you get that wider adoption, one, drivers expect convenience, but they're also willing to pay for it, right? And
Mhm.
so I think in
Mhm.
that sense, like for charge point operators, it's a very interesting time to be thinking about how they're deploying their sites and deploying those strategies.
Mhm.
I think the other pieces that I did find interesting, I mean, back to the amenity side of things,
Mhm.
is just how strongly that came through, right? I mean, you mentioned that Wi-Fi was the
Mhm.
highest ranked, right? I found that fascinating in the sense that Wi-Fi was ranked as higher than restrooms as,
Mhm.
as something that people want at their charging sites.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it is those pieces as you're starting to see more and more people come on. They're looking for ways to make that dwell time essentially, I mean, whether it's productive or comfortable or whatever, right? But they're
Mhm.
really looking for ways to not just sit in their car on their phone while
Mhm.
their
Mhm.
car charges, right? And so I think starting to take some of that in, and hopefully as we continue to see sites deploy with that kind of message is going to be critical, right?
Mhm.
And look, I mean, you asked in terms of, hey, how has that impacted our strategy?
Mhm.
Um, Look, I know we chatted last time, right? And obviously,
Mhm.
given our heritage, we've got these great relationships with these fuel retailers.
Mhm.
And the great thing for fuel retailers is they're in a very strong natural position to take advantage of the shift towards EV, right?
Mhm.
You think about convenience and you think about the locations. I
Mhm.
mean, a lot of our customers have spent the last 100 years fine-tuning their networks to
Mhm.
make sure that they're
Mhm.
in those high traffic locations, that they're by the highways, that they're in places where people are going to want to stop.
Mhm.
And on top of that, I mean, we chatted last time again, right, in terms of this whole outdoor fueling experience. is something that they've taken years and years to perfect,
Hmm.
right? And so they know that people want well-lit locations. They know that people want to be able to stand underneath the canopy. They
Hmm.
understand that things like clean bathrooms and Wi-Fi
Hmm.
are important, right? And then
Hmm.
on top of that, they've got all of the, I mean, essentially kind of the food offerings, the coffee, like all those pieces that people want to be able to take advantage of. And so for us, I think the biggest pieces that we've taken away from it are, hey, now more than ever, we truly believe that it's an interesting time for fuel retailers to be taking a look at EV and thinking, how can they really get in the mix here and start taking advantage? Because they truly do have a really strong position here as the market continues to evolve.
Hmm. Well, one, and I think we touched on this last time too, is I think, and of course this is changing. This is kind of a dynamic thing with EVs right now,
Yeah.
but the longer dwell time compared to ICE
Yeah.
currently. Now, I'll get into how that's kind of changing, but traditionally for ICE vehicles, it's I'd say like 3 to 5 minutes to top off the tank, right? Whereas even with the best commercially available fast charging, at least in North America, you're looking at probably 20, 30, 45 minutes.
Sure.
So, and maybe your research bears this out, is that's a real prime opportunity for these site owners that offer more compelling amenities like food, like a lounge, Wi-Fi, to really kind of capitalize on that, because that's something that traditional fuel retailers, people are in and out. Okay, thank you, bye. You know, they don't, they can't, the time isn't sticky enough for them to really make something of it. Um, of course, there are a lot of constraints on this. I mean, I've been to some gas stations where I'm amazed that they even fit it on the lot.
Yeah.
So, so obviously, for a traditional fuel, for traditional gas station, it's all about throughput. You know,
Right.
traffic, the frequency and density of traffic going through there. That's flipped a little bit with EVs, and that the opportunity, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me would be more with the dwell time and the stickiness of engaging the customer as much as possible with the time they're spending there, rather than just
Yeah.
throughput. And I'm wondering if you could kind of speak to how, I guess, how your partners are kind of managing that transition, and if it's even possible to do both at the same time, and if there are any kind of case studies or examples you can think of, where that's been done successfully.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that's
Um,
really a loaded question.
no, but it's the right question to ask.
Mhm.
And look, I think there's a couple of things to touch on there, right? The interesting piece that I would say, right, is if you look back historically, right, at least
Mhm.
within the fuel retail space,
Mhm.
there's been essentially there's been a tremendous amount of the land lease model that's been
Mhm.
deployed,
Mhm.
right, where effectively they'll rent a parking space and XYZ CPO is going to come in, they'll put the chargers on, it's their network, and effectively then the site host is offering EV charging to their customers,
But they're
but
kind
not
of out of
really
the
as
loop,
part of
though.
their business,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so what we've seen, and I mean, we've seen it a lot over in Europe, and the shift is continuing to happen more aggressively in the US now, is for all of those reasons that you just mentioned, the site hosts are starting to get much more involved in terms of the fuel retailers starting to say, hey, we actually want to make sure that we're owning this, right? And
Mhm.
I think that's driven by a couple of key pieces, right? I think the one is just consumer experience and control over that consumer experience, right?
Mhm.
I mean, look, I think we all know, right? I mean, even as I said, right, the EVs are adopting fast, but we remain a
Mhm.
minority in terms of the driving population within the
Mhm.
US. That said, we are a very loud minority, right? In
Mhm.
that there's a very big social element to being
Yeah.
an EV driver, right? You look on
Mhm.
things like PlugShare and you see there's these big forums where people are having big discussions. Um, and what you see is that the reliability and the consumer experience that you offer at your site uh, gets talked about, right? And
Mhm.
truly what that means is that those forums can really make or break the reputation of those sites.
Mhm.
Um, and again, right, I think many of the drivers, as we spoke about, are very nervous about going to an unreliable charger. They're very nervous
Hmm.
about
Hmm.
having exactly what you said to happen, where it says, hey, you pull up to a charger and it doesn't work, right? And now
Hmm.
you're running
Hmm.
low on battery and you're stressed about your car dying, right?
Hmm.
And so people take those reviews very, very seriously. And some of the challenges that we've seen with our core customers being the fuel retailers is if you go down that land lease model, um, you don't control that experience,
Hmm.
right? And so if the charger is down,
Hmm.
it's not actually yours to service. It's
Hmm.
not yours to fix. You don't
But you
have
still have to deal with the angry customers coming in saying, "How
exactly.
come this doesn't work?" Blah blah blah, and they're like, "We can't do anything about it," you know. So
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And that's the interesting thing is if you look on those forums, it's very rarely the CPO getting blasted, right?
mhm.
It's the flag that sits on top of the site, right? And so it's that C-store owner that's
The
getting all the
CP,
bad
yeah, the
press.
CPO, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. When they don't really have control over it,
Hmm.
right? And so they're really pushing to try to integrate some of that in now to make sure that they're controlling that consumer experience and offering a positive experience at their sites.
Hmm.
The other piece that you mentioned there, right, which is interesting that we're starting to see a lot of, and it's actually a core piece of what we believe Konekt brings to the market, is there's starting to be a much heavier tie-in to existing fuel retail loyalty programs,
Hmm.
right? I think like they've seen on the traditional side of the business that those loyalty programs are exceptionally effective, right, in terms
Hmm.
of being able to get repeat customers and to be able to make that consumer experience better.
Hmm.
And so what they're trying to do is effectively tie that loyalty from the EV driver into those in-store purchases. And
Hmm.
exactly as you said, but really take advantage of the fact that, hey, there is additional dwell time here. And so if
Hmm.
you can then push that loyalty program to tie into, just as an example, hey, charge 10 times, get a free coffee, right? Like something like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
You start to really drive that consistent experience for the customer as well. And again, something that they're familiar with.
Hmm.
Um, the challenge that our customers have had with that land lease model is you can't, right? Because the two systems don't actually integrate in with each other.
Hmm.
Um, but effectively through some of the technology that we bring to market, we're actually able to integrate those systems so that EV just becomes another portion of the convenience store
Hmm.
business, right? And that's starting to really strongly differentiate there. Um, and then the last thing that I'll say, which is interesting, Ed, is you mentioned essentially it's hey, there are some of these sites that are let's call them challenging, right? Like
Hmm.
they're small,
Hmm.
um, but the benefit for the convenience store as a customer set is they've been making those space trade-offs forever, right? I
Hmm.
mean, like
Hmm.
they've had to think through, hey, how many dispensers do I want versus how much C-store space do I want? What does that
Hmm.
throughput look like, and how do I need to change my offering to mix that? And so certainly what I'd say is we're starting to see a trend towards effectively kind of much more amenity focused sites.
Hmm.
I mean,
Rather than
specifically
just fueling.
exactly right. And I mean, specifically in Europe, right? Like we've got
Hmm.
an increasing number of just charging only sites,
Hmm.
right? So essentially, I mean, right by me, right, there was an older BP site that got taken down that's now being put up as a BP Pulse kind of full just EV hub, right? Where they're
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
really gearing that amenity set that they've got there towards that EV driver.
Hmm.
And so we're seeing these transitions happen in real time.
Hmm.
Um, but I think you're right. I mean, it's going to be that transitionary phase, right? And I think it'll take a while for everybody to get it right. But
Hmm.
I mean, certainly, I would say there's a number of our customers that are doing it exceptionally well.
Hmm.
Um, and again, comes back to just then it's a much better experience for the driver. They're driving that in-store engagement as well, which is great for the customer and great for them, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I a few months ago I had an experience. I was on a road trip to Southern California, and I don't know if you've heard of them. It's right now. I think they only have like I think one or two active sites, but this kind of regional network called Rove.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and so I actually stopped by, I guess their first or their flagship store, and it was really nice. I mean, lots of chargers. Now, granted, it was a pretty big lot size, so you know they have the luxury of kind of spreading out a little bit. But like a really high end convenience store, it was affiliated with the Gelsons, which I don't know if you're familiar with. It's kind of more of a premium supermarket kind of brand in Southern California, but very well staffed. They were very polite. They were, oh, sir, is there anything we can do for you? Or, they were even having a barbecue cookout on the patio. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's really nice. So, um, yeah, it's definitely not a traditional fueling experience like you get at a gas station where,
Right.
pull in, fill up, and, you gotta get the key to the bathroom with like the PVC pipe hanging off of it. And, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
anyway,
No, and I mean the interesting piece of it, right, is that I have to imagine after that experience, if you're ever back in that area, you'd go
mhm.
back to that site again, right? And I think
Yeah, I
that's what
mean,
a lot of our customers are learning.
if I'm in the area and, I don't know. I mean, I kind of went out of my way the first time just because I was curious about it. I don't know if I'd necessarily go out of my way to visit it again, but if I was going by and I was in the area, I'd definitely visit it again.
So
So
would you say there's a 21% chance that, oh wait, no, what was the number that you would take a 5 minute detour to?
for clean restrooms and Wi-Fi, yeah. No, but it's, if that's what the future looks like, I mean, it's pretty promising.
Yeah.
Now, obviously in Southern California, at least by US standards, they have a pretty high density of EV ownership. So, um, I think they, assuming they kind of calculated the throughput and the revenue from that. But there are other. I mean, Phil just got back from a trip from was it Nebraska? He
Hmm.
said it was,
Yeah.
and he saw like what, one or two EVs during your whole trip or something.
Yeah, I saw almost no EVs. Saw a lot of those Amazon
The
Rivian
Rivian vans.
vans.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always shocking when I leave this state and leave my little bubble of Southern California as to what the rest of America does in the
Yeah.
middle. Like it's very different. I'm very aware that what I see in my neighborhood is not representative of the majority of the country.
Yeah. And like I said, we discussed this before, but how regional this is. Imagine if you go to like Wyoming or, Montana, if you try to pitch this, they'll probably be like, we hardly see any of you, why should I spend, six figures to,
Yeah.
put all this in when no one's going to use it. But, I mean, I don't know. I mean, in your experience, what's been the tipping point where like former skeptics start to be interested and they're like, oh, maybe there's an opportunity in this. Um,
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Um, I mean, the piece that I would say is I haven't necessarily seen a specific tipping point,
mhm,
right? And I think part of that comes down to, look, I think we're doing a better and better job as an industry of being able to answer some of those questions,
mhm,
right? I mean, look, I think some of it is taking the excuses away from drivers as well,
mhm,
right? I mean, we talked a lot about reliability.
mhm,
One of the downsides of some of the EV forums that I spoke about is if you're an ICE driver and you're looking at that and you're thinking about trying to get an EV, and all
mhm.
you're seeing is commentary around, hey, this charger doesn't work, this charger doesn't work, I had to go 10 minutes out of my way here. You're going to look at that and you're going to think, like, why would
Why
I do
bother?
this?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so I think, look, as we and I mean I say we, I mean as us as Konect, I mean one of the biggest pieces that we try to push is, hey, we can really help drive that high reliability, right?
Mhm,
And I think as that starts to come through, drivers start to have less excuses. You start to see the adoption there, and then really as soon as that adoption starts to kick through is when you start to see the site hosts pivot around, right?
mhm, mhm,
And look, there's obviously a little bit of a chicken and egg there, right? Because the site hosts
mhm,
are saying, oh, I want to see more drivers, and the drivers are saying, I want to see more chargers before I make the
mhm.
leap.
Yeah.
But look, I think still right that's where some of the funding aspects can come into play, right? And
Mhm,
so I mean, like obviously Nevi has been all over the press,
mhm,
and with
mhm,
Nevi essentially kind of kicking back off here and getting moving again, I do believe that that'll continue to go a long way to helping get that initial infrastructure in place and start to solve that chicken and egg problem.
mhm,
But even in addition to Nevi, right? I mean, one of the things that I find interesting is a lot of the focus gets placed on that federal funding.
mhm,
But if you look at state level grants, utility programs, like essentially there's a whole bunch of these other funding pools that exist for site
mhm,
hosts to be
mhm,
able to go out and in some cases actually get even more funding than they would through Nevi.
mhm,
And admittedly with probably less red tape to sort through,
mhm, mhm,
right? And so that's where I would say, I mean, we've been able to convince some of those customers who've looked at this and said, "Oh, I'm never going to see a return on this. I don't think this makes sense." By really just taking a detailed look at what they're doing and saying, "Hey, look, you've got of your whatever X number of sites,
Hmm.
25 that are available within your area." That takes that upfront cost significantly down with the utilization rates that are in whatever state you're in. Um, this becomes a really viable opportunity. Right.
Hmm.
I know we spoke a lot about kind of Connect specifically last time, but
Hmm. Hmm.
I come back to the three pieces that we see, right, in terms of, hey, what does tip the scales for our customers to want
Hmm.
to take that leap into electrification? And it's look, it's got to be easy, right? So our
Hmm.
customers don't want to be out trying to source 18 different pieces to pull together what is an EV ecosystem.
Hmm.
It's got to be seamless, and that comes back
Hmm.
to, hey, they want it to integrate with loyalty, they want it to integrate with the media platforms that they've already got running.
Hmm.
um, but the most important one is it's got to be profitable, right?
Hmm.
They've got to be able to make money out of this as a business, right? And so I think
Hmm.
by being able to get in there and help them figure out what that upfront cost looks like and help them take that down and really drive that ROI up. I mean, at
Hmm.
the end of the day, that's really what gets our customers exciting and moving forward.
I guess that's one area. I mean, as much as possible in like kind of a summary fashion, that's one area I'm not super familiar with is like the revenue model of traditional gas stations and convenience stores in terms of financing upgrades. Um, how does that typically work?
Yeah, in the traditional fueling side of the world,
Hmm. Yeah, or specifically how it does today with if they want to install chargers.
yeah, sure. So, look, I mean, essentially for us, right, there's a number of different options that we bring to
Hmm.
customers when they're thinking about installing chargers, right?
Hmm.
So, depending on kind of where they are, how big they are, what level of financial capacity they have,
Hmm.
we've got a whole bunch of different programs that we can put in place.
Hmm.
So for us, I mean, as a first brush, right, kind of regardless of what path they're going down,
Hmm.
we help out with that funding analysis, right?
Hmm.
And that's where I say, I mean, obviously, Nevi gets a lot of the headlines because of
Sure.
the ties with the federal government, but I think a lot of our customers are amazed at just how much money actually does want to go to work in the space, right? And
Hmm.
just how
Hmm.
many of these programs are out there and available.
Hmm.
So that's one path. But then in addition to that, I mean, we partner with a whole bunch of essentially kind of other players within our ecosystem to bring whether it's financing options to our customers so that they
Hmm.
can
Hmm.
essentially get that financing package up front, take down that upfront cost, and then take that on as more of an operating model. Or we do partner with essentially kind of some complete third party use cases where if one of our customers says, "Hey, I really want to take on EV, not willing to take any bit of a financial leap on it," we can introduce them essentially to a third party operator who will come on, go down that leasing path, and then effectively allow them to still offer EV charging to their customers. So
Hmm.
it's a very wide gambit.
Sure.
And to be
Sure.
honest, it works in a pretty similar way on the traditional side of things, just probably without that third party piece.
Hmm. So you mentioned earlier on about PlugShare, which I'm well aware of, and how influential that's become in kind of getting the word out about charging stations, reliability, pricing, that sort of thing. I wanted to touch on this, and I know this might be kind of a sensitive subject, especially from the B2B context, but I've pricing can really be all over the place with charging, either state to state or Um, I mean, I I made the mistake once of charging not even a DC fast charger, but a level two, where it was 78 cents a kilowatt hour, which is insane. And but I didn't read the fine print before I plugged in. I'm like, oh look, charger, and oh nobody's parked here.
I wonder
Plugged
why.
in. I wonder why. Found out. And then just the other day, it was I went to a government building near my house here, and it was actually ChargePoint. But then I looked online. I said, what's the rate for this? It was nearly $5 for 15 minutes, which, if you break that down on a kilowatt hour level, that's insane. And it's
Yeah.
like, I think, I guess, you mentioned the survey findings are that drivers are willing to pay more for convenience for charging. But at what point, I guess, and I know my guess is you probably take kind of a laissez-faire approach to a lot of your customers like, hey, you do what works for you. You know, we're not going to tell you how to run your business, but I'm wondering if you do though generally have some guidelines in terms of pricing, in terms of best practices. Like, look, yes, you can set the price with whatever you want, but you know, there's kind of it gets to a certain level where customers will actually avoid your charger because of
Yeah.
the high prices and
Yeah.
how that's communicated, managed. You know, like I said, recommendations.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, to be totally honest with you, it's more of the first for us, right? In the sense that, hey, like we let our customers go out and run their business.
Hmm.
We certainly have a whole ton of pricing expertise and pricing analysis that we can help customers with. And essentially, if they pull us in to do that, we're more than happy to provide that. But
Hmm.
more than anything, what we find is, well, a couple of things, right? I think one, we really push to make sure that our customers do understand pricing in their local markets, right? I
Hmm.
think that's one of the big pieces. Obviously, prices fluctuate dramatically across the
Sure.
markets, and so they need to have a good understanding for what is competitive and what good looks like. Um, I think again that in some ways the interesting piece for us, right, is
Hmm.
our customers have been working in a dynamic competitive pricing environment for 100 years, right? When you think about how often fuel prices are changing, you think about how often they need to take that through.
Hmm.
And so they're actually normally very good at making those essentially kind of price versus quantity decisions,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And so typically what we find is they've got their own kind of very heavily staffed pricing teams that go out and look at this stuff very aggressively.
Hmm.
And so typically I think what we find is, yeah, they're normally pretty close to the mark.
Okay.
Look at to your point, maybe
Based
there's
on their
going to be
experience
outliers.
with like you know, gasoline and diesel. So in terms of like you know, I guess competitive pricing, just let the guy
Correct.
across the street or down the street. And so they're also applying that logic to charging as well.
Correct. Correct. Right. I mean,
Okay.
as we said, like they look in a lot of ways, right? The convenience store owners, they're looking for what we talked about before, right? They're
Hmm.
looking for that consumer connection where they can then drive that consumer in store, be able to kind of have that in-store relationship and that loyalty and all those pieces with the customers.
Hmm.
Um, and so they're not really going to benefit by putting a price out there that is so egregious that customers are not going to come anymore,
Hmm.
right?
Kind of self-defeating. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so typically what we see is they are normally very good at yeah taking into account, hey, what is the competitive pricing around my area, and then and really making sure that they push that through.
Okay.
One of the other things that's interesting, right? And I mean we see this a lot in Norway, where obviously the EV adoption is
Hmm.
very
Hmm.
very high. But we actually also allow for our customers to essentially um, integrate with the price pull signs that they've got on site. And
Hmm.
so now what you're starting to see is in a lot of these locations in
On the
Norway,
marquees. Yeah.
it's not only it's not only the fueling prices that are up on those price pulls, they've got the per kilowatt price as well.
Hmm.
Right. And so in that, I think it's great for consumers in that you're not going to pull in and get surprised. Um, but it's also, I think, just good for those, like essentially those customers who are willing to go out and be aggressive and stand behind their pricing
Hmm.
to draw in the right level of engagement from drivers. But
Hmm.
I think that's the piece that I think is very key, right? Is hey, I mean, you need to have visibility into that pricing for
Hmm. Hmm.
consumers, right? I think to your point, the worst thing that happens is you charge up and all of a sudden you realize 10 minutes after that you've charged up at a rate that you never would have agreed to had you known what it was,
Yeah.
right? And so I think we really try to take advantage of A, those time pulls, but B,
Hmm.
the Konect chargers, the screen is
Hmm.
32 inches. And so we make sure that that pricing is provided on that screen
Hmm.
so that consumers know what it is they're getting into.
So I kind of want to get into that a little more in terms of like I'm more on the data side. So like how retailers that are within the Connect network, how can they kind of broadcast or make that data available to drivers where, you know, if they have a connected navigation system in their car
Yeah.
that, you know, you do charger charging point search and that get the kilowatt hour pricing.
Yeah.
How, I mean, I imagine you've kind of worked that into your model, but I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, essentially that's exactly right. So through the software that we provide, effectively we offer integrations into what would be kind of all of the big, yeah, call it, I mean, charger finders, right? You think of things like ZapMap, like we would have integrations into that so that one, you can post your pricing, you can make sure that that's visible, but two, even just getting those sites onto ZapMap so that
Hmm.
they're available for consumers who can then go and see and figure out where they want to stop.
Hmm.
Um, the auto one is an interesting one, right? Because what I would say is auto manufacturers are starting to be more cooperative there.
Hmm. Hmm.
But for a large part, they do hold those systems pretty tight, right? And so
Hmm.
we are trying to work with some of the auto OEMs to make sure that those
Hmm.
integrations are available and that we can actually get that pricing pushed out to them.
Hmm.
Um, but
I, but I've seen, I mean, so my day job, I
yeah,
cover infotainment and telematics, and what I'm seeing is a fairly large scale adoption among a lot of the OEMs of Google Maps as
yeah,
kind of their
yeah,
navigation platform. So I imagine, if you have an integration with that, that'll, you know,
yes.
address a big part of the market. And then the other ones, there's some various different providers like TomTom, for instance, or whatnot. Um, if you make that data available to them, that would kind of get it out, I'd say, to the most drivers.
Yeah, and so I mean Google Maps is one that we tie into, right?
Hmm.
And so I think to your point, right? I mean, we are look, we're aggressively trying to get
Hmm.
integrations with as many of those as we can, right? I think that the piece for us comes back to, hey, for our customers and for drivers, right? The more visibility that they can have into what sites are available, what's the utilization at those sites, like, hey, if they've got six chargers, are three of them being used right now?
Hmm.
What's the pricing at that site? I think all of those things are beneficial for both our customers and for the consumers.
Hmm.
And so we're pushing to get as many of those as we can.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, today, exactly. I mean, Google Maps, Zap Map. I mean, effectively all of like the
Hmm.
major ones we've got ready to go.
Great. So this just actually was announced a couple days ago, and I don't know if you heard about this or what your thoughts are on this, but I guess Tesla's just launched a white label supercharger program. Um, so I'm just kind of interested is if you see them as competition or a potential partner with Konect, and how
Yeah.
how you kind of view that.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, look, Tesla Tesla has always been a competitor to us in one way
Hmm.
or another, right?
Hmm.
Look, it's a bit of a different model that they typically offer, right?
Hmm.
Where essentially they will control all of the back end, all of the software, all of those pieces, versus we tend to allow our customers to do
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
right? But look, at the end of the day, I mean, I remain steadfast in what I said before, which is, hey, for this industry to continue to evolve, which is, I mean, hey,
Hmm.
it's good for Tesla, it's good for us, it's good for
Hmm.
drivers, right? But we need that driver adoption to come,
Hmm.
right? And so, really, when I look at it, it's, hey, if that leads to more sites deploying chargers and
Hmm.
that leads to more EV adoption, that's fantastic,
Yeah,
right? I think
competition
for a lot
improves
of
the
us in
breed.
this
Yeah.
industry, it's, hey, like what we really want is for the industry to keep growing, right? And to grow at a pace that's
Hmm.
yeah, that allows driver adoption to tick up. And so in that sense, it's yeah, it's great news.
Yeah. But I think from your standpoint, though, you have kind of a built-in advantage with your traditional customer base of fuel retailers and convenience stores, and that you can have the system integration into their on-site system, so they have greater control over it, greater visibility in terms of the utilization and the revenue. Um, and I I don't know what Tesla offers on that
Yeah.
at that level, and maybe they can't even compete. Maybe I know they said they're going to handle the maintenance and so forth, but for your traditional customer, they're like, no, we want the visibility, we want the control over the experience. So I guess for the customers you're going after, you kind of have an inherent advantage in that for that. So
Yeah. I mean, well, look, we like to think so, Ed. You know, that's yeah.
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 Well, awesome. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, but yeah, I'm kind of with you. The more, the better. Competition improves the breed. Um, I think the better. I honestly feel charging is for better for worse the number one kind of obstacle preventing greater EV adoption is the, frustrating customer experience, and some people just saying, I don't even want to deal with this. So I think the more we can improve that, the more EV adoption we'll see. So
Totally agreed. Totally agreed. No, and hey, thanks again for having me on, guys.
yeah,
Happy to be back, and yeah, hopefully back again in the future.
So how
that'd
do
be awesome.
people find out more about Konect?
Yes.
We'll just wrap up with social media plugs and website plugs.
Yeah, sure. So essentially, if you just go to I think it's gilbarcoveeder.com/connect, you can find everything there. We've also got there's a Gilbarco Veeder-Root LinkedIn page where we're consistently posting updates on Connect, and that's where you can find most of the pieces on us.
Now, does that have, from a consumer standpoint, does that also have a site finder, or how is that handled?
So that does not today, Ed.
Okay.
Again, typically it's because
We'll
we
have you
allow.
on for the third time to talk about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, but it's essentially today our customers kind of control where they want their sites to be visible. But
Gotcha.
hey, as we said, I think in this industry, life is going to be about partnerships for a long time and making sure that we give drivers that visibility, right? So it's one for us to pick up and have that conversation with them.
All right. Thanks again.
Great. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right,
All
thank
right.
you.
Bye.